Today, we are going to take a more grassroots approach at looking at the new Prius Prime. Now, the frontal area of the Prius Prime is one of its best attributes, and Toyota has been kind enough to give us two colors that kind of stand out. This blue or ocean blue or teal or whatever the hell you want to call it, and their red, which looks really good on here. And of course, every other color is about 3 different shades of gray or, silver. Now, the frontal area, specifically these quad LED headlamps, is something that is kind of borrowed from their Lexus lineup, and you have to pay more money to get them on the Lexus. Here, they're just kind of included, and the light output is amazing. When you turn on the brights, I'm sure you could see these things from space. They're really good. Now, this is a slippery car in terms of aerodynamics, but there are some strange things here that you could argue that are form or function. I'm not too sure, but they have blocked off this air inlet here. This does not flow air through the bumper along the side of the wheels like a lot of other manufacturers are doing for aerodynamics. Also, the side mirrors are not mounted on the door, which kind of creates more road noise. You could have this argument, what would be better versus looks versus style versus aerodynamics, and I think they're trying to find some balance here. The side profile, it's not that out of the box, and that's because they stuck with the Prius name. So if you're going to stick with a branding, you have to make it somewhat recognizable to people, and that's what they've done. Along the side, you have accents, these little aerodynamic nodules that help to flow air. The back trim piece has a little bit of black around it to give it, just break up the color. I like some of the accents that they put on here that move all the way to the back. Again, you have the nodules in the back that flow along the taillights. It's a smooth looking car, and I think it would look a lot better as a coupe. But it is what it is. Now it's time to slide my way into the pooper of the Prius Prime, or the back end. If you are a rump man, there's a lot to talk about here. The first thing you're going to notice that is very unique is the curvature in this glass, and the glass curvature follows right into this rear deck lid. It's extremely unique. The whole taillight design is unique. It's what you would think a futuristic car would look like when you were a kid, and here it is. Now, one of the coolest parts about this, and one of the reasons why I like the first generation Honda Insight so much, is they focus so much on functional aerodynamics, and that's what this is about, being slippery, moving the air over the top part of the car, along the side and underneath. The second most important part of this hatch is it's a manually operated liftgate. There's no motors or electronics here. They also have used a carbon composite entire rear liftgate, and you can see it's unfinished, unpainted, and it is extremely lightweight. Now, that's the whole point, right? You want to reduce weight, you get better fuel efficiency, or more electric power. Now, the negative part about this hatch is the cost. If somebody happens to rear end you in this hatch is going to cost you $3,000 to $3,600 just for this liftgate. That's excluding the glass, which I didn't look up the cost, but I'm sure it's more than a normal car. So if you or your loved ones is trying to do a J-turn into the McDonald's parking lot and you ball this thing up in the back, you're going to be hurting. Now it's time to talk about the cargo space. When we lift up this hatch, you're going to see immediately in the Prius Prime, you lose some of the cargo space because of the battery pack. It's larger, it needs to propel you in EV mode farther, and that's the trade-off. You're losing some of the space. Now, Barry called me. He said his ex-wife needed a ride to rehab. She was kind of just way into plastic surgery, so she had a lot of luggage and suitcases here, little cases for her trinkets and massagers and all that. And I could fit one large carry-on in here and maybe 2, smaller carry-ons and a couple backpacks. But you're losing so much height here that you don't have a lot of stackability. Now, the rear seats go down, so that saves you a little bit, but that is also not a flat cargo space. So it's something that you're going to have to be aware of. Again, get in here, play around with it, see what you can fit or can't fit, and make your determination on whether you can deal with this daily. It's time to get inside the Prime. And when you get in here, if you're not somebody that's used to this, you're going to want to throw up in your mouth, because I have no idea what they're doing in here with this white dashboard, with this strange Tupperware-like plastics and the center console. This is such a quirky, oddly designed interior for essentially no other reason than just to make it different. Now, the side part of that is, if you're somebody that can appreciate this, which I appreciate it, I get what they're trying to do here, and it doesn't feel like every other car. And that is the counterpoint to it. And I think once you get used to some of the weird elements to it, it gives it personality. And I talk about that a lot with modern cars. They keep continuing to strip away the personality of vehicles. And Toyota has been on that bandwagon before, and I think they're trying to break away from it. And that's what the Prius Prime gives you. It gives you a little bit of that. The next thing to talk about is the instrument cluster. And this is nothing new for the Prius, but it is weird when you look at it for the first time. The instrument cluster is here in the center of the dashboard. There is nothing here like traditional vehicles. Now, the benefit is, I'm sure when you do a left-hand drive or a right-hand drive version of this car, it makes configuring the interior much easier. But the second part is all your information's here. Your speedometer, your fuel gauge, your parking indicator from park, reverse to drive, and all the other idiot lights that they put up here, including the clock. Now, the other thing they put up here is all the menu system for this vehicle. And it is just, honestly, there is too much going on here. You can cycle through your fuel consumption record, your drive monitor 2, your eco diary, which tells you how much you've used the air conditioning, your energy monitor system, which is a graphic of the car that shows you where the battery power is going or the engine power is going. And then, of course, the most usable screen is the HV system indicator, which tells you your eco score, and then also what your throttle position is, how much battery are you sucking up, and the amount of miles you have left for driving in EV mode. And I wish that they would allow you to kind of customize this screen, because I really want to know when the battery's charging, the gasoline motor's on. I wish there was just better ways to consolidate it in one thing. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. You're going to play around with this. There's so many options for setting up the car in here. It's all there. Next thing to talk about is interior comfort. And a lot of that has to do directly with the seating design. And I think many people are going to be very pleased with these seats, because they are designed for a lot of different body types. Let's just be straight about that. There's a lot of give in the bolsters. There's plenty of compression you can give into the padding, into the sides, into the ribcage area. I think you're going to get comfortable in here very fast. The other thing they've done is they've opted for cloth. And this is a disappearing act in cars in favor of fake leather, leatherette, or leather seating surface that people are obsessed with. And the best part about cloth interiors is you're not subjected to extremes in temperature. You don't get burned alive on a hot seat, and you don't turn into, you don't have to clench up so much with the cold. It just always feels right. Next thing to talk about is interior ergonomics, and this is where the Prime starts to fall apart for me. It is a real mixed bag. Let's talk about the pros first. The buttons and switches and control stalks on the steering wheel are standard Toyota stuff. They work, easy to use, no drama. Your gear selector stick, it is straightforward. You can easily read it here, and you can see what gear you're up here. There's not a lot of futzing around with it. It's easy to figure out. Your park button's easy to get to, and your drive mode buttons are very legible, simple. I like how they consolidated it into this one space. Huge, huge plus. Where it gets really crappy is this center console area. The lower console has this slippery white plastic. Great for storage until you put shit in here, and then you're driving and stuff flies out of it. So if you put your key in here, expect it to fly out into your lap or on the floors. The cup holder design is compromised. The center armrest only opens towards the passenger, which means the passenger can't get in here easily. And then you don't have, the padding on here for your arms, socks. There's no knee padding for either sides of your knee. Just a lot of weird stuff. But the thing I can't forgive, and this is where designers start to go off the deep end to make it cute instead of functional, is the seat heater design. And the buttons are buried behind this center console, and it's about as bad as the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, which is one of the worst cars ever made, released into the US, and they followed it here, and it's completely unforgivable. If you're gonna make this quirky, figure out how to make it usable. Now it's time to talk about electronics and infotainment. And now this is the middle trim level, and there's a huge reason to choose this over the maxed out one. And that is you get physical HVAC controls here, buttons to push, and rocker switches to adjust your fan speed and temperature. That is a massive pro, something that you lose when you go to the upper level with the tablet dash, because all that gets moved to the touchscreen. And out of all the touchscreen cars I've been in that move the HVAC controls there, they all suck. So I really like this. I would opt for it just because of that. Now you do have a touchscreen based infotainment in here that's pretty much in every other Toyota. And if you've ever seen it before, it's the same thing. You have physical rotary knobs for your tuning and your volume. The nice thing is if you do have a problem where it freezes up, you just hold in the volume button, you push it in, hold it for 5 seconds, and it reboots the system. Everything else, the user interface is just average. It's kind of quirky and slow, but it does work. I haven't had any weird stuff with Bluetooth. It always seems to work pretty well. It just doesn't look pretty. The sound system in the middle trim is pretty average. Now, since this is a pretty isolated cabin, you get good bass response, tight bass. But I found for most of my music, it does sound a little bit muddy. And then you try to screw with the EQ a little bit, the mids and the highs, and it gets really tinny really fast. So it's something you're gonna wanna test on your own and see if your music sounds, doable in here. One of the last few things about the frontal interior space is the visibility. There is a lot of glass in here. The windshield has kind of this reverse rake, and you always feel this level of command over the road in front of you, something that typically you need an SUV for in modern vehicles. I don't feel like I'm constantly triple checking around me in here, and it's just really nice for a change. But the negative attribute of having this huge window is this visor barely covers your visibility here. So on my commute home from work, I'm constantly blinded by the sun. So I have to pull myself forward or move the seat up. There's no extension. It's just something they need to fix, and it would be a simple fix. Lastly is this piano gloss black plastic all over this dashboard. It's something designers are infatuated with in modern vehicles. Now let me ask you the most simple question. If you were designing a home with a single point of entry, would you install white carpet in a high traffic area where you're going in and out of it all the time? No, you wouldn't. You know why? Because it would look like somebody took a dump on it. It would be absolutely destroyed. You'd put something more suitable there, like hardwood or some composite or a carpet that was designed for that. That's the equivalent of putting black, shiny plastic all over an area that you're constantly interacting with. Your HVAC controls are all shiny plastic. Your volume knobs. This whole thing is always dusty, full of oils, and then to compound that, of course, you're interacting with the touchscreen. So you're constantly having to clean this, and it's just annoying. Why are they doing this? Well, I don't know. Maybe someday somebody will give me a straight answer. Now the back seat of the Prius Prime, and my driver's seat's pretty much moved all the way back and reclined. This is a comfortable space. You're gonna have to watch your head getting in, but for the most part, the back seats are about as good as the front. They're a little bit more flat, but you're gonna hold 4 passengers and 4 passengers alone in the back of this car because the center console area is just an armrest and cup holders. You really, unless it's, some type of small kid, you can put a bungee cord around him to tie him down, but this really is, again, a 4-passenger car. Now, Scott is on vacation this week. He's doing a full 50-state tour of all the iPhone stores to find the right set of wireless headphones. So he's not available. So we're going to do this the old school way. Now, next month, we're going to be moving into our own shop space. But until then, let's take a look at some of the underneath. This is Toyota's new global architecture, which means the chassis is going to be reused and recycled for multiple vehicles. But one of the reasons why they developed this new architecture is to improve the aging platforms of the past. So in the front, you have a new strut-based front suspension. There's heavy utilization of aero underneath, of course, up to modern standards. They've changed the rigidity of control arms. The hubs and knuckles are more robust. The center of the car has more aero panels, and as you get to the back, this is where a lot of the changes happened. They went to a full multi-link suspension in the back, something that is tuned extremely well. Now, all you have to do is get into the old Prius 2014, 2015, and get in here, and you realize how much of a massive difference all these underpinnings have done for the car. The next biggest thing to talk about with this new Prius, or the Prius Prime, is their new transaxle, the P610. This is their next generation. Now, fundamentally, everything is very similar, how it works, but internally, there are some massive changes here. Not only from a weight perspective, this is 70 pounds lighter than the first generation transaxle in the Prius when it first launched. Everything is designed around efficiency, lightweight, and for the first time, MG1, which is your motor generator unit that used to only do regeneration, basically engine braking, regeneration, recharging the battery packs, MG1 can now also act as a drive unit to power the wheels, much like MG2. So they can work in conjunction to give this car more power. And they do that with a new clutch or a flywheel design that only rotates in one direction, which enables that MG1 to be used in that fashion. Really, the last thing to talk about with batteries is efficiency. Now, in laboratory conditions, perfect temperature conditions, cells can last forever almost if you're within that window. And in real world conditions, that's not possible. Batteries lose efficiency. It doesn't matter what additives they put in the cells. It doesn't matter what the computer controls are, the temperature monitoring, the temperature controls, all the systems they keep, the state of charge and the battery health good in a car like this, the air cooling, the monitoring, it can do all these tricks to keep the longevity of these packs high. But if you're in extreme cold or extreme hot, these batteries do take a hit. And over time, they lose efficiency. Most manufacturers will not say this flat out, but most of the time you're going to lose 10 to 20% battery efficiency over the course of 100,000 miles, which means you take a look at the range that you have on an EV when it's new. Of course, it's great. It's always consistent. But the more miles you put on it, the more you get that pack cycled, the more heat and cold you get into it outside of the controllable range, you lose efficiency. And it's something to note. If you're living in an extreme climate, your battery pack may not last as long as somebody else. And when you have to replace this out of warranty, generally it's anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 depending on the vehicle. And that's kind of the fine print of these cars. And a full EV is even worse than that. So keep that in mind in terms of if you're going to keep this forever, the running costs can be more expensive. From here on out, all our in the shop segments when we get back into the real shop is going to have full vehicle curb weights via our new Longacre hybrid scale system. And these scales are hybrid because, well, the scale pads are still wired to a comm box. But the nice part is the comm box is now wireless, which enables us to look at this, the data on our phone or a tablet, so we can be mobile. And I'm going to be setting up a car pretty soon. It's going to be so helpful to get, the corner balance right. I don't have to keep looking back. It just makes it simple. Now, for the shop stuff with the press cars and cars in general, we can see curb weights, we can see cross weights, and we can see the individual weight for each side of the car, which is really nice. In the case of the Prius Prime, this vehicle weighs 3,406 pounds with a full tank of fuel. So every car we do is going to have a full tank of fuel. The cross weight, which is left to right percentage-wise, it's 49.04% balanced, which means the left side is 50%, the right side is 49.02%, and that is really good for a production car. Typically, you want your cross weight kind of 50-50 left and right. So it's set up really well, and I think that's about it for the In the Shoppy segment, and next week we will be back in action with a new vehicle. The Prius Prime Hybrid. We are in EV mode, and we're going to take a look at the acceleration, and we're going to put it in power mode so we get the full Monty, whatever that means. That was 60 miles an hour, and immediately I can tell you right away, there's no point of driving this vehicle like a complete maniac because it's not about that. It's obviously not about that, so we're not going to spend too much time talking about it. But what I will spend some time talking about is how they've improved this car's chassis and handling. Let's take a look at that. The first thing you're going to notice about the Prime, really, is this is not like any other Prius ever made. This is on their new architecture. It handles like a nimble, compact car. It doesn't float around everywhere like the old car used to. The steering's not totally numb. The body control is good. Everything that you would expect from a small, compact car from the modern age is here. And the best part about it is, if you're driving for efficiency, no longer do you have to slow up for every single turn because you feel like this thing's going to roll over on its tires. It grips really well, it handles well, so now you can keep up the momentum when you're driving this. The other great part about the Prius is its ride quality, solidity, and just overall sound isolation. This feels really good compared to the previous generation, and I've said this already. When I drove the previous generation Prius, it's one of the reasons a lot of people hated it. It just really wasn't that good of a car to drive. This makes up for so much that was wrong before this. When you are in eco mode, this thing is just buttery smooth. It's buttery smooth as long as the electric motor is the only thing running. But the best part about it is, even when that gasoline motor kicks on and you're above 25 miles an hour, they have it so isolated. They have it so well dampened that you can't even feel the gasoline motor kick on, and you barely hear it. I think they've just mastered the art of not only hybridization for this car, they've also turned it into kind of a true EV as well. I'm not gonna lie, this has really surprised me. I think this is one of the biggest surprises of the year, and it shouldn't be, but it is. And I think from talking to the Toyota reps, to the people that I know, Toyota was serious about taking this car to the next level. They rode the hybrid train as long as they possibly could, and now they are ready to kind of take the next step towards EVs, and they've done this in a realistic way. They've improved all the driving dynamics to the point where a real car person could drive this every day and get some enjoyment out of it. When you see the level of fuel efficiency, the economy, and just smoothness of the entire car, it's such a major change from the previous generation Prius to now that, I don't know, you don't see this too often in the auto industry, but they've done it with this car. Now, there's a couple things to talk about that are pretty important with this car. There's 3 drive modes. You have Eco, Normal, and Power. Now, Power enables the gasoline motor to start. It gives you all the power. It sharpens the throttle response. It gives you the full power of the electric motors and battery pack. Normal is a mix between both. The throttle pedal is not as sensitive. It kind of balances Eco, and it just balances the whole thing. Most people are going to drive in that mode. Unlike most cars I drive, I always drive this in eco mode, and it is largely because it gives you the best efficiency. It runs in EV mode almost exclusively. So those are the 3 modes. The next mode is you have hybrid mode and full EV mode. You can run this in pure EV mode, and that's one of the best parts about it. So a full charge from 0 is 5.5 hours, and that gives you about 28 to 29 miles. Now, in my driving, leaving in an eco mode and EV mode only, I can pretty much do my entire commute on EV mode and never fire up the gasoline motor, which means for my driving, I get about 1,000 miles to the tank. And I'm also getting about 90 miles per gallon. Now, you can argue the validity of that number, but the truth is that the math adds up. And that's one of the best parts about this car is really I can drive it around all the time in EV mode. Now, you can tell that you're in EV mode because it's telling you that it's in EV mode and how many miles you have until the battery is depleted. When that gets down to 0, it just switches over to hybrid mode automatically, and it drives like a regular car. You get a balance of a little bit of electric assistance, and you also get the gasoline motor to run and help recharge the battery from its lowest state. And either way you drive, it's very smooth regardless. The one thing that you have to be careful about in EV mode is you have to be really ginger on the throttle, and it tells you kind of where you're at. As soon as you drop the hammer, you watch your miles disappear that's left on the battery. And you can see it right there, just drop like 0.3 miles in just a couple seconds of just mashing on the gas. And it's something, you know, that you're going to have to deal with modern EVs and modern electric cars. If you drive hard, you're losing battery efficiency extremely quick. Now, there are some negatives to driving it. It is still slow. Even when you dial in the gasoline motor and you're in power mode and you turn up the juice and you drive like a madman, it just is slow. Even with the torque of the electric motor, you never feel a sense of just raw acceleration. There is a lot of torque from the start, but that's about it. Now, the eCVT in this car is about as good as you can make it, but it does feel just like that single speed transmission. This is not going to bring out any type of passion in you when you're driving it. Now, they have made up for the fact that it's a little bit slower by totally, again, like I said, making this a so much better platform in terms of driving. From the chassis to the steering is really good to the braking is solid. It feels like a great car to drive, to handle, to brake. The wind noise is low. But, you know, again, you're losing it all with acceleration, and that's something that you get with a pure EV that has a bigger electric motor, a bigger battery pack. You get a lot more juice that you can just use to pound around, and you lose that a lot with the Prius Prime. The conclusion of the Prius Prime. I am extremely surprised and impressed with the way this car was designed and the way that it drives. For how much the Prius brand has been demonized by the enthusiast, what Toyota has done here is turned it completely around. This is nothing like it was before. From a car that I honestly hated driving to a car that I enjoyed almost every minute on the inside of it. And that is because they have a sorted chassis. The steering is excellent. The way that it drives feels like a lightweight compact car. And it makes up for the fact that, yes, this is still a slow putter of a car. The next part is you can operate it as a true EV. You can drive it up to 85 miles an hour. You get 25 to 28 miles of range or EV, depending on how you drive it. And I really like that. I think most people are going to really enjoy that for their daily commute, never having to operate the gasoline part of the motor. But yes, you can operate it as a normal car. You don't have range anxiety. I can drive it forever if I wanted to and just drive it as a normal hybrid. And they've found that balance somehow. The next biggest part of this vehicle is the price point. The Plus model is $28,000, and for what you get, carbon composite hatch, lightweight, the bulletproof reliability from Toyota investing so much into this hybrid model. They've licensed it out to other people. They've nearly perfected it with this car, and it's something you don't even have to think about. Even when you get to the 100,000 mile range, it's not like, oh my God, what's gonna break? And for Toyota, this is something they've invested so much money in, they're dedicated to. It's not a pet project like some other car manufacturers that have just made cars so he can fund his mission to Mars. This is a big deal to Toyota, and the support is there, the supply chain's there, the parts are there, the pedigree is there, and you know it's gonna work. Huge pro for it. Now, the negative part about it is you're not going to convert somebody over that is a car person or not a hybrid person. This isn't going to attract them. It's not going to attract them because of the looks and the interior personality. It is way too off the deep end. Now, I can get over it. I think a lot of people that are looking for this specific car are going to get over it and appreciate it. But it's a big negative, honestly. And same thing with the slowness of the car. It's just not as fast as a regular EV, and it's not as quick as a regular compact either. And I think, you know, the overall package is really good, but there's some negatives here that are going to turn some people off and completely turn people away from ever even considering it, despite its price point and some of the pros. So I think that's something you're going to have to look at if you're definitely go drive this car. And I say this a lot, drive it. I think you're going to be extremely surprised by it. It might even sell you away from just a traditional four-door compact. That's about it.